Sacred threads, a journey through the world's religions. Before temples rose or scriptures sang, before names like Yahweh, Buddha, or Allah echoed through history, humanity looked up at the stars and asked, "Why are we here?" Sacred Threads is a sweeping 15-part audio odyssey into the heart of our deepest yearnings, for meaning, for order, for the divine. From the silent meditations of Jain monks to the cosmic battles of Zoroastrian myth, from the fire of Sinai to the path beneath the Bodhi tree, this series traces the origins, stories, and living truths of the world's great religions, and the new ones still being born. You'll walk with prophets, philosophers, and skeptics. You'll witness the rise of sacred texts and hear the whispered doubts of those who walked away. And through it all, you'll discover not just what others believe, but what belief itself reveals about us. Whether you're faithful, skeptical, or just curious, this is more than a history of religions. It's a mirror, and the question it reflects is eternal. What do you worship when the world falls silent?
The dawn of religion.
Episode 12, Doubt and Daring, Atheism and Secular Humanism. Narrator's Prelude. There is a room with no altar, only a table. On it, a lamp, a pen, a ledger of promises. A man enters, wets the nib, and writes a single sentence before he signs. "I will try to live by reasons I can explain, and by kindness I can defend." The lamp's circle of light is small, but it is enough to see his own hand. Welcome to episode 12 of The World's Religions. Tonight we walk a path that is less a creed than a commitment, to ask for evidence, to accept uncertainty, and to build meaning with one another. This is the story of atheism and secular humanism, the people who doubted the gods, the thinkers who tried to live well without them, and the movements that turned private skepticism into public ethics. We'll begin with terms, then cross time and geography, from Greek atomists and Indian materialists to Chinese naturalists, from medieval whispers to the Enlightenment and Victorian storms, ending part 1 as modern humanism prepares to step on stage. 1. Words before worlds, what we mean. The vocabulary here is a thicket. Let's clear it gently. Atheism, atheos, without a god. In practice, the lack of belief in gods. Some hold a positive claim. There are no gods. Many simply withhold belief where evidence is lacking. Agnosticism, from T.H. Huxley's coinage, not knowing. Either the claim that we cannot know whether gods exist or the personal stance of withholding judgment. Non-theism, an umbrella for positions that do not center on a deity. Many Buddhisms and Jains fall here. Secularism, not a belief about gods, but a political principle. State neutrality in matters of religion so all consciences can breathe. Secular, of the saeculum, this age, worldly time, not sacred time. Humanism, the ethical project that humans can flourish through reason, empathy, and cooperation without appeal to revelation. Secular humanism stresses that this ethic does not require the supernatural. Free thought, skepticism, a method. Beliefs should track evidence, not authority or tradition. These terms overlap. An individual may be an atheist by belief, agnostic about ultimate certainty, a secularist in politics, and a humanist in ethics, or none of the above, and simply say, "I try to be decent." 2. Before the ism. Ancient doubts, East and West. 2.1 Greece. Atoms, gardens, and thunder explained. The Greeks did not invent doubt, but they wrote it down in forms that would travel. Protagoras, 5th century BCE, famously declared, "Concerning the gods, I have no means of knowing whether they exist or not." an early agnostic shrug that got him in trouble. Democritus and later Epicurus proposed atomism. The world is atoms and void. Apparent order emerges from natural causes. Epicurus did not deny gods outright. He said if they exist, they are blissfully unconcerned. The real terrors are fear and pain, not divine wrath. His tetrapharmakos, four-part cure. Don't fear God. Don't worry about death. What is good is easy to get. What is terrible is easy to endure. Lucretius, 1st century BCE, in De Rerum Natura, turned that physics into poetry. Lightning has natural causes, plagues are matter and movement. Religion can make men cruel when fear is harnessed by power. He sang a universe without a supervising will and urged ataraxia, untroubledness, as a human good. This Greco-Roman current is not simply negation, it's consolation without myth. 2.2 India, Carvaka and the lion that uproots principles. On the Indian subcontinent, alongside rich theologies, ran a materialist streak. The Carvaka Lokayata school, known largely through opponents' texts, prized perception over revelation, mocked Vedic ritual, and held that consciousness ends with the body. As long as you live, live well, one verse has it, even if you must borrow ghee to do it, a line often quoted by critics to paint them as hedonists, though their main thrust was anti-speculative. The skeptical philosopher Jayarashi Bhatta, circa 8th to 9th century in Tattva Paplava Sima, the lion that uproots all principles, attacked every epistemic ladder. If no proof secures itself, dogmatism collapses. Meanwhile, Buddhism and Jainism offered non-theistic paths. No creator God is needed to explain suffering or salvation. Discipline and insight suffice. That is not atheism in the modern polemical sense, but it is a religious life without a deity at its center. 2.3 China. The sober eye. Chinese traditions often asked, does it work, rather than, is it revealed? In the 1st century, Wang Chong's Lunheng, balanced discourses, weighed omens, portents, and marvels with a cool scale, preferring natural explanations. Junzi, 3rd century BCE, the stern Confucian, treated heaven as pattern, not a wish-granting agent. If there's drought, plant better and govern justly. Taoist texts laughed at human projections. The Zhuangzi in particular delights in unseating certainties. Again, not atheism as identity, but naturalism as a reflex. 2.4 The Islamic World. Critics of Prophecy. Within classical Islam, a few voices pressed hard on reason versus revelation. Abu Bakr al-Razi's 9th to 10th century, prized reason and ethics over any one prophetic law. Ibn al-Rawand, 9th century, in reports from his opponents, criticized the need for prophets. The poet Al-Ma'ara, 10th to 11th century, wrote corrosively witty verses about received religion. Most Islamic philosophy took other routes, Avicenna's metaphysics, Averro's rationalism, but these skeptical threads show that free thought is not a purely European plant. 2.5 Europe's Middle Ages, the insult, atheist. For much of medieval Christendom, atheist was a slander, not a self-description, flung at heretics, Jews, Muslims, or even devout Christians who bent the wrong way in doctrinal disputes. There were naturalists and nominalists, but open denials of God are rare in records, and when the charge appears, it often means simply, enemy of my theology. 3. A fuse is lit. Printing, science, and the early moderns. 3.1 A manuscript in a monk's hand. In 1417, the humanist Poggio Bracciolini finds a dusty copy of Lucretius in a German monastery. When De Rerum Natura begins to circulate, old arguments about nature without gods find new readers. Combined with printing, recovery of Greek texts, and voyages that stretch maps, Europe becomes a lab for alternative explanations. 3.2 Skepticism grows teeth. Montaigne, 16th century, turns doubt into a human art. Recognize your limits, be slow to persecute. Spinoza, 1632 to 1677, excommunicated by Amsterdam's Portuguese Jewish community, dissolves the personal deity into nature itself. He is not an atheist in his own terms, he reveres the rational order of the world, but his God does not command miracles. He is the lawful structure of being. Gassendi revives Epicurean atomism. Hobbes advances a stark materialism. Galileo, Kepler, Newton show that mathematical law organizes the heavens more reliably than angels' whims. The point is not that science proves atheism, it changes the default. Thunder now has charge and pressure, not wrathful moods. 3.3. The Enlightenment's Debate Hall. Pierre Bayle argues that a society of atheists could be moral, a scandalous suggestion that opens space for ethics without theology. Hume disassembles miracle testimony and natural theology with patient skepticism. If reports are less likely than nature's regularity, believe nature. Voltaire defends toleration while keeping a polished deism. Diderot and his friends assemble the Encyclopédie, a warehouse of crafts and knowledge that implies human progress via know-how, not grace. Baron d'Holbach publishes Système de la Nature, 1770, a frankly atheistic treatise arguing that matter and motion suffice to explain the world and that priests enthrone fear to rule. For the first time in Europe, a major public voice says out loud, "There is no God," and ties that conclusion to education and reform. 3.4. Revolution's Excess and Experiment. The French Revolution briefly erects the cult of reason and then the cult of the supreme being under Robespierre, moments that show both the fervor and the danger of turning philosophical critique into state liturgy. A lesson modern humanists will later underline. Pluralism and rights must anchor any secular order. 4. Darwin, Doubt, and New Ethics, 19th century. 4.1. Origins Rewritten. Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species, 1859, offers natural selection as a blind, elegant mechanism for life's diversity. Paley's watchmaker looks less necessary. Design can emerge, not be imposed. Darwin's own letters show a gentle agnosticism. Others draw bolder conclusions. T.H. Huxley coins agnostic to distinguish honest not knowing from both dogmatic belief and dogmatic disbelief. 4.2. God as projection, society as opiate, meaning as work. Ludwig Feuerbach reads God as human ideals projected onto the heavens. To reclaim our powers, bring them home. Karl Marx calls religion an opiate, a balm and a chain, urging attention to material conditions. Later, state atheisms will claim his mantle. Humanists will insist that freedom of conscience must not be sacrificed to any program. Auguste Comte proposes positivism, knowledge from observable facts, and even a quasi-religion of humanity with rituals for scientists and civic virtue. Friedrich Nietzsche declares, God is dead. Not a boast, but a diagnosis. Old absolutes have lost credibility. Now comes the danger of nihilism and the task of creating values. 4.3. Movements with coats and ledgers. Ethical culture, founded 1876 by Felix Adler in New York, builds Sunday-like societies for character, service, and social reform without creed. In Britain, George Jacob Holyoake popularizes secularism as a civic ethic for mixed societies. The National Secular Society agitates for education, free speech, and disestablishment. In France, laïcité mature, eventually culminating in the 1905 law separating churches and state. In the United States, the First Amendment's dual commitments, no establishment, free exercise, become the grammar of a secular republic, not hostility to religion, but refusal to privilege any. 4.4. The Freethinker's Voice. Lecterns fill with lecturers. Robert G. Ingersoll, the great agnostic, tours America denouncing hellfire and praising human decency. Debates on evolution and biblical criticism electrify audiences. The flinty word atheist still shocks, but the ground has shifted. A person can be publicly moral without a theological signature. 5. A note on non-belief and the sacred. Before we pause, a paradox worth holding. Non-belief often heightens a sense of the sacred, not as a being, but as a stance toward reality. Many atheists and humanists speak of reverence for honest inquiry, awe before the night sky, gratitude at the sheer fact of being, mourning with no promise of reunion, and therefore more careful love of the time we get. The point is not to smuggle God back in, but to say depth survives the loss of dogma. 6. Where we pause and what comes next. We have set the table, defined the terms, heard ancient voices of doubt in Athens, Patna, and Luoyang, traced skeptical strands through the Islamic world and medieval Europe, watched the Enlightenment teach thunder to be weather, crossed the 19th century's triple frontier, Darwin's biology, materialist critique, new civic movements, to the doorstep of modern humanism. In Part 2, we'll step into the 20th century, logical positivists, existentialists, and the rise of organized humanism, from ethical culture to the American Humanist Association, Humanists UK, and Humanists International. Follow law and pluralism, from school prayer cases and evolution trials to models of secular governance across nations. Meet secular rituals, humanist weddings and memorials, coming-of-age ceremonies, and the charities and skeptic groups that turn values into work. Weigh new atheism, its arguments and its tone, and the push for a kinder, culture-building humanism. Map global non-belief, the rise of the knowns alongside real risks for apostates in some countries. Close with a field guide, finding meaning, morality, and community without revelation, and cooperating across belief to enlarge the common good. A library after closing. The lights hum, and the dust motes look like a private galaxy. A student at a long wooden table pulls another book toward herself, Humanist Manifesto, and then, for balance, a volume of poetry. Outside, church bells ring the hour. Down the block, a science museum dims its planetarium. Between bells and planets, she sketches the outline of a life. Honest inquiry, deliberate kindness, beauty where she can find it. She does not expect certainty. She expects to try. If Part 1 traced the long fuse from ancient doubters to Enlightenment critics and the Victorian quarrel with God, Part 2 follows the spark through the 20th and 21st centuries. How skepticism became organized humanism, how law learned to protect conscience without creed, how communities built secular ritual, how new atheism thundered and quieted, and how millions now live good enough lives without revelation. 7. The 20th century backdrop, from positivists to existentialists. 7.1. The meaning of meaning. Early in the century, the Vienna Circle and their allies sharpened a radical test. Only statements verifiable by experience or reducible to logic are meaningful. A.J. Ayer popularized the view. God exists is neither true nor false, he argued, but meaningless if it can't be tested. Logical positivism would later soften under critique. Its own verification test failed its test, yet its attitude endured. Ask what a claim predicts, and prefer clarity to metaphysical fog. 7.2. Pragmatists and a common faith. Across the Atlantic, William James and John Dewey asked a different question. Not, is the idea metaphysically pure, but what does it do? James treated religion as experience to be weighed by its fruits, courage, charity, endurance, while admitting illusions can console. Dewey proposed a common faith, devotion to human flourishing, education, and democratic cooperation without a supernatural frame. The word religion could, he argued, be rehabilitated as the name for our highest concerns, but owned by us, not by the sky. 7.3 Existentialists under a bare bulb. After 2 world wars, existentialists stood under the stark light. Jean-Paul Sartre. Existence precedes essence. No blueprint waits for us. We must choose, and our choices author our character. Albert Camus called the universe absurd, indifferent to our longings, and urged revolt without lies. Live lucidly, love stubbornly, help each other without guarantees. For many, this was the first spirituality of honesty. Meaning is not found, it is made. 8. Humanism finds its voice. Manifestos, societies, and a global family. 8.1 Religious humanists and a declaration. In 1933, 30-plus signers, ministers, educators, philosophers issued Humanist Manifesto 1. It was optimistic, too much so, we now know, calling humanism a religion centered on human welfare, not divine decree. It imagined a cooperative commonwealth, science guided by ethics, and education as civic sacrament. After war and atrocity, humanists would temper that exuberance. But the line was drawn. Ethics without revelation, community without dogma. 8.2 American and British movements. In the United States, ethical culture, founded 1876, matured into a network of societies for character and service. The American Humanist Association formed in 1941, publishing the Humanist and later Humanist Manifesto 2 in 1973, more sober about human failings, and Humanist Manifesto 3, 2003, a concise set of aspirations. Commit to reason, compassion, and dignity. Find meaning in relationships and creative work. Steward the planet. Honor human rights. In Britain, rationalist and secularist clubs coalesced over the 19th to 20th centuries. By the late 1960s, they gathered under a single banner that now goes by Humanists UK, campaigning for inclusive education, equal marriage, and recognition of humanist ceremonies. 8.3 The International Frame. In 1952, organizations from across continents founded an umbrella body, today called Humanists International, to coordinate advocacy and solidarity. Its Amsterdam Declaration, 2002, updated in 2022, articulates a global statement of humanist values: ethical naturalism, individual dignity, democracy, free inquiry, human rights, empathy, and responsibility for this world. Each year it publishes a freedom of thought report on discrimination and persecution against the non-religious, reminding members that skepticism is still dangerous in many places. 8.4 Scandinavia and the civic model. In Norway, Sweden, Iceland, Finland, and the Netherlands, humanist associations became civic fixtures, training chaplains for hospitals and the military, organizing coming-of-age courses for teens, and offering weddings and funerals that are solemn without theism. In Scotland, humanist weddings won legal recognition in the 2000s and quickly became one of the country's most chosen ceremonies. Ireland followed with legal recognition a few years later. The lesson: ritual need not be supernatural to be meaningful and publicly valid. 9. Law and pluralism. How states make room. 9.12 Clauses and a tightrope, United States. American secularism braids 2 commitments: no establishment, the state may not endorse or fund a church, and free exercise, people may practice their faith or lack of it. Landmark cases removed school-led prayers and mandatory scripture readings from public schools. Others protected the teaching of evolution and barred creation science, and later, intelligent design from science classrooms. Courts have also recognized that non-theistic worldviews merit equal treatment, So a prisoner's humanist study group or an atheist's conscientious claim can be protected much like a theist's. The line is not simple. Cases about monuments, legislative prayers, and public symbols continue to calibrate the boundary between heritage and endorsement. The underlying principle endures. Government should neither favor nor burden citizens because of belief or unbelief. 9.2 Laïcité and its tensions. France. France's laïcité, a robust separation dating to 1905, limits religious symbols in certain public settings and bans state funding of worship. Admirers praise its neutrality, critics warn it can become an instrument of assimilation against minorities. Either way, it's a distinct model. The state claims symbolic silence to keep the civic square common. 9.3 Plural secularisms. India, Turkey, elsewhere. India is constitutionally secular in a multi-faith society. The state funds no church, yet engages with multiple traditions, overseeing personal law systems and subsidizing diverse cultural and charitable bodies. The ideal, sometimes kept, sometimes betrayed, is principled distance. Fairness to all, favoritism to none. Turkey historically enshrined laicism while maintaining a state directorate of religious affairs, showing another hybrid. In many democracies, humanists push not for a religion-free public, but for a religion-neutral state where consciences share space. 10. Life together without liturgy. Secular rituals and communities. 10.1 Weddings, farewells, first steps. Humanists reclaimed ritual as craft, ceremonies tailored to a couple's story, funerals that honor the dead with music, memory, and promise to carry their work, naming ceremonies that gather friends to pledge care for a child. In parts of Europe, humanist confirmations guide teenagers through ethics, media literacy, relationships, and civic duty, ending with a public pledge to think and care. 10.2 Sunday without sermon. Some communities meet for music, poetry, and talks, a Sunday assembly or oasis, not to worship but to sing, reflect, and serve. Others prefer book clubs, volunteer crews, skeptics in the pub nights, or campouts. The format isn't the point, belonging is. People who leave religion often miss community more than creed. Humanism works when it gives that back. 10.3 Chaplaincy and care. Hospitals, universities, and militaries increasingly recognize humanist chaplains to serve the non-religious, offering grief support, ethics consults, and rites of passage. The premise is simple. When the moment is tender, a person deserves care in their own language. 11. New atheism and the turn to building. 11.1 A clarion decade. In the mid-2000s, a cluster of books, The End of Faith, The God Delusion, God is Not Great, Breaking the Spell, argued that religion often harms. It fuels extremism, shields bad ideas from scrutiny, and competes with science. Their tone was bracing and, to many, liberating. They normalized out-loud unbelief for a generation. 11.2 The Critiques. But the movement drew fire too. Overgeneralization about diverse faiths, a tendency to conflate religion with its worst, a demographic narrowness, a style that excelled at demolition but less at construction. Some ex-believers needed gentle exits, some minorities felt targeted, some allies asked for a shift from winning arguments to building culture. 11.3 What stuck and what changed? What remains is the permission structure. You can live openly as an atheist. You can ask hard questions without apology. What changed is focus. Many now center humanist practice, mutual aid, secular grief rituals, evidence-based philanthropy, climate work, pluralist politics. The watchword is pro-social, skepticism with shoulders. 12. The map now. Non-belief by the numbers and the risks. 12.1. The rise of the nuns. In many regions, Western Europe, North America, Australia, East Asia, the share of adults who identify as religiously unaffiliated has climbed over recent decades. The category is messy. It includes spiritual people who dislike labels, but the trend line is clear. More citizens now vote, marry, and mourn without a church. In some countries of East Asia and Central Europe, non-affiliation has long been the norm. Elsewhere, it's new and uneven by age and region. 12.2, where it is still dangerous. In parts of the world, leaving or criticizing a dominant faith risks job loss, family rejection, assault, even prison or death under apostasy or blasphemy laws. Organizations of ex-Muslims and other former believers provide legal aid, safe meetups, and counseling, often at personal risk. Humanists International and allied groups document these cases annually to press for freedom of thought as a basic right. 13. A field guide. Building a life without revelation. 13.1. Meaning. Start local. Purpose grows where skills meet needs. A classroom that works because you showed up. A river cleaner because you turned up with a bag and gloves. Make a stack. Identity is layered. Friend, parent, maker, neighbor, citizen. If one layer thins, others cushion you. Cultivate awe. Watch a birth, a forest, a night sky. Read a poem out loud. Listen to a quartet breathe. Awe doesn't require a deity. It requires attention. 13.2. Morality. Harm principle first. Start with don't hurt, then widen to help. Fairness checks. When designing rules, try a veil of ignorance thought experiment. Would this be acceptable if you didn't know your place in the outcome? Evidence plus empathy. Let data guide policy and let stories keep it human. Neither alone is enough. 13.3. Community. Choose a practice. A monthly meal, a park cleanup, a reading circle. Ritual is repetition with meaning. It turns neighbors into friends. Mark time. Celebrate solstices, birthdays, adoptions, first jobs, retirements. Write vows and tributes that fit the person, not a template. Share care. Set up mutual aid threads for illness, childcare, elder visits. A humanist community proves itself in ordinary crises. 13.4. Grief. Tell the truth. Don't promise what you don't believe. Speak of memory, legacy, love that remains. Make a place. Plant a tree. Fund a scholarship. Keep a chair at the table for a year. Meaning is made, not found. Borrow wisely. If a hymn or psalm consoles a grieving relative, honor their language while keeping yours. Pluralism is kindness under pressure. 13.5. Pitfalls to avoid. Scientism. Science is our best tool for is. It is not, by itself, an ought. Tie findings to values deliberately. Contempt. Mocking believers rarely changes minds. It often hardens them. Argue hard ideas, honor persons. Cynicism. The world is not saved by snark. Put your shoulder somewhere and push. 14. Epilogue. The lamp and the ledger. A hall fills on a Saturday afternoon. At the front, a couple stand with ring and vow, the efficient reading lines they wrote themselves. Later, in a hospital down the road, a chaplain sits with a family and asks for stories. What song did she love? And together they build a farewell. Across town, volunteers sort canned food. On a balcony, someone stares at the Milky Way and feels the delicious, chastening smallness of being one mind under that bright river. No altar, only a table. On it, lamp, pen, ledger of promises. Atheism at its best is simply the refusal to say more than we know. Humanism at its best is the refusal to do less than we can. Put together, they are a way of moving through a fragile world. Curious, corrigible, compassionate. They do not ask for certainty, they ask for integrity. They do not offer eternity, they offer time well used. If you need a creed, try a small one you can keep. Be honest about what is. Be kind about who is. Fix what you can. Then sign your name and light the lamp again tomorrow. End of episode 12. Doubt and Daring, Atheism and Secular Humanism.